November 11th, 1620. 41 men crowd a creaking cabin while Cape Cod's waters slap the hull. They're about to sign something unprecedented. No king approved it, no parliament blessed it. Just desperate men claiming the right to govern themselves. Revolution begins here. I grip the quill. My hand shakes, not from this bitter cold, but from knowing what we're creating. England never taught us this. Ordinary men deciding their fate. The ink bottle sits before me. Once I sign, there's no retreat. Democracy demands courage. 2 months crossing hell's ocean. Storms shattered masts. Disease claimed the strongest. They missed Virginia. Their legal charter's worthless here. Some passengers whisper mutiny openly now. Without authority, who commands? Who obeys? The ship anchors in chaos. Winter approaches. Death waits patiently outside. This hastily drafted document becomes America's first self-governing framework. Before the Constitution existed. Before the Declaration. Here, cramped in darkness, the revolutionary seed takes root. People governing themselves, not subjects obeying, not colonists following, citizens creating, the futures born in desperation's womb. John Carver studies faces surrounding him, merchants beside laborers, religious zealots beside hired workers. Men who barely speak must now build community together. The contract must bind everyone. Without it, winter kills them separately, a unity or death. Simple arithmetic. He begins drafting words carefully. Picture their crossing, 66 days through hell itself. September's gale snapped the main beam. Families slept soaked. Children wailed from hunger. One man swept overboard into black water. Another born mid-storm. You've never experienced such sustained terror. They earned this land through suffering. Northern Virginia held their patent's legal protection. Atlantic storms pushed them hundreds of miles northeast instead. When land appeared November 9th, experienced sailors recognized disaster immediately. Cape Cod. Their London patent dies here. In these unmapped waters, they possess no authority whatsoever. Legally, they're trespassers now. Stephen Hopkins survived Bermuda's shipwreck years before, knows lawlessness breeds horror. In Virginia, he nearly hung for challenging authority. Now, scarred by experience, he argues for structure. Rules prevent chaos. Order ensures survival. His gravelly voice cuts through murmuring tension. Men listen. Survival wisdom outweighs pride. The strangers, non-Puritan passengers hired for practical skills, grow dangerously restless. One brash youth declares openly that no valid authority exists here, that once ashore, he is free. Others echo agreement. The saints exchange worried glances. Without unity, their holy mission drowns before reaching shore. I close my eyes, remembering England's brutal persecutions. Prison's darkness. Midnight escapes to Holland. 12 years exiled in Leiden, separated from homeland. And sacrificed everything for religious freedom. Now salvation depends on convincing doubters to accept self-created authority. God tests us severely. Bradford recalls their Leiden farewell. Pastor Robinson's prophetic words about truth, yet to break forth, linger in his memory. This moment, drafting their own government, is that truth manifesting, not merely surviving wilderness, creating unprecedented political reality. A covenant born from necessity becomes revolutionary principle. History writes itself unknowingly. Smell that cabin. Unwashed bodies, sickness, fear's sharp tang. 41 men pressed around rough wooden planks. Outside, wives and children wait anxiously. 102 souls total. Barely enough for viable community. If they fracture now, winter finishes what the Atlantic started. Unity isn't optional here. Young John Alden watches debate unfold. A cooper by trade, hired for barrel-making skills, not opinions. Yet here, his voice counts equally with gentlemen. This strange equality unsettles his English sensibilities. Back home, men knew their ordained place. Here, saltwater dissolves ancient hierarchies completely. Carver proposes elegantly simple language. Combine into a civil body politic. Enact just, equal laws for general good. Everyone bound by mutual consent. No elaborate philosophy required, just practical necessity speaking. The beauty lies in simplicity itself. Government created by agreement, not divine right or bloody conquest. Someone raises the crucial question, who leads? Without hierarchy defined by birth or royal appointment, how do they choose? The answer seems obvious yet revolutionary. Election. They will vote. Majority decides. Chosen leaders serve the community, not themselves. Leadership becomes service, not inherited privilege. England's world inverted. I've fought Dutch wars. No military discipline's absolute necessity. But this? Men voting on their commander? It violates everything I learned about authority and chain of command. Yet, watching these determined faces, I recognize something stronger than forced obedience. Willing cooperation. Perhaps they're right. The quill passes hand to hand. Some sign confidently, others hesitate, understanding what their mark truly means. They're binding themselves to unmade decisions, unwritten laws, unchosen leaders, pure faith. Faith in each other's character. Faith that neighbors won't betray. Faith that reason prevails over selfishness. Edward Winslow signs third, after Carver and Bradford. At 25, younger than most, he grasps the document's profound significance. They're not just organizing settlement logistics. They're establishing that people possess an inherent right to self-governance. No king grants this. They claim it. Revolution disguised as administrative necessity. Isaac Allerton adds his merchant's signature fourth. His calculating mind assesses risks coldly. Without legitimate authority, property rights become meaningless fantasy. Contracts unenforceable, debts unpayable. London investors financing this voyage expect profits. Chaos guarantees commercial failure. This compact ensures viability, not just survival. Business requires order. 4 servants sign, extraordinary in an era where servants rarely possess legal standing. Yet here, their marks matter. They're full members of this body politic. The compact doesn't free them from service obligations, but acknowledges them as stakeholders in governance. Class lines blur subtly but significantly. Notice who doesn't sign: women. Wives and daughters wait outside, while men decide collective fate. This restriction reveals the era's brutal limitations, not the compact's underlying principles. The idea planted here, government by consent, eventually grows beyond its creator's imagination to include those initially excluded. Seeds mature slowly. Afternoon light fades, candles illuminate serious faces. Someone suggests reading the completed document aloud. Bradford's steady voice fills cramped space as he invokes God's name. They begin not with legal formulas, but religious invocation. For them, faith and governance intertwine inseparably. Separating them hasn't occurred yet. The phrase, "we whose names are underwritten," carries revolutionary weight. Not subjects granted royal permission, not colonists following distant decrees. They identify themselves by their own names, their own authority. Revolution hides there. Self-identification precedes self-governance. Know yourself, then rule yourself accordingly. The document mentions King James. They're not declaring independence yet, but the language is careful. They acknowledge loyalty while asserting autonomy. It's delicate balancing. They need England's protection, resources, trade, yet they claim the right to govern themselves here. Threading that needle requires diplomatic precision. Solemnly and mutually in the presence of God, they bind themselves with sacred oath. Breaking this covenant means betraying not just neighbors, but divine witness. God observes every action. This compact isn't merely legal contract. It's a holy vow. Violation risks eternal consequences. They covenant and combine themselves together into a civil body politic. Revolutionary words disguised as practical necessity. They're inventing government from nothing, not inheriting it, not receiving it, creating it. Action precedes political theory. Philosophers will come later. They're practicing democracy before anyone names it. For their better ordering and preservation, survival motivates political innovation. They're not philosophers debating ideal governments in comfortable universities. They're desperate people solving immediate crisis. The compact's genius lies in addressing real problems with workable solutions. Theory emerges from practice. Philosophy follows necessity. Experience births ideas. They promise to enact, constitute, and frame just and equal laws. Equal, the word resonates. powerfully. Not laws favoring nobility's privileges, not laws preserving inherited advantages, equal laws. The concept challenges everything England taught them. Yet here, isolation from traditional hierarchies makes equality practically necessary, not merely ideological. They speak of ordinances, acts, constitutions, and offices from time to time. They're establishing not fixed rules, but an adaptive process, a system for making, changing, and adjusting rules continuously. The Compact creates a framework for flexibility. They acknowledge uncertainty ahead and design a mechanism for learning through experience. Laws shall be thought most meet and convenient for the general good, not for individual profit, not for factional advantage. General good, everyone's welfare combined. The phrase establishes community interest above personal gain. In England, laws often protected aristocratic privileges exclusively. Here, they attempt something radically different. They promise all due submission and obedience to what they create. They're binding themselves to laws they'll write, administered by officials they'll elect. Obedience to self-chosen authority differs fundamentally from forced compliance with imposed rule. The distinction seems subtle, but changes everything. Consent transforms obligation into commitment. 41 signatures complete the Compact. John Carver counts them carefully, twice. Every adult male freeman has signed. No one refused participation. Unity achieved, on parchment at least. The real test will be enforcing laws, resolving disputes, maintaining cooperation when interests conflict. Signing is easy, living it proves harder. They fold the document carefully, reverently. Who keeps it safe? Bradford, chosen as secretary, accepts responsibility. This parchment represents their shared commitment physically. Lose it, and the covenant remains in hearts. But a physical record matters. Future generations might doubt. The signatures prove that this happened here, today. Immediate business follows. Elect a governor. Carver seems obvious. Respected, experienced, level-headed under pressure. Voices murmur quick agreement. No formal ballot needed. Consensus emerges naturally. He accepts with a grave nod, aware of the burden. Democracy's first exercise proves remarkably smooth. Later elections may turn contentious. This one unites. Outside, sunset paints Cape Cod's waters gold and crimson. Inside, men emerge from the cabin, exhausted but relieved. They've done it. Created order from potential chaos. Their wives read their expressions, understanding something momentous occurred. Children sense the shifted mood. Tension eases slightly. Night comes more peacefully. I write tonight not of legal technicalities, but of emotional weight. We've crossed more than ocean. We've crossed into a new way of thinking about power, authority, governance itself. I don't fully grasp the implications. How could I? Revolution reveals its scope slowly, across generations. November 12th dawns cold and gray. The first exploratory party prepares to row ashore. Under the Compact's fresh authority, Carver orders the expedition. Men obey willingly, not from habit or fear, but because they agreed to obey whoever they elected. The difference matters. Consent changes everything, even simple commands. Standish leads armed men onto Cape Cod's beaches. They walk carefully through dunes, searching for fresh water and suitable settlement sites. Every step is taken under self-created authority. No royal charter guides them. No London investors direct them. Just the Compact, 41 signatures, shared commitment binding strangers into community. They discover cleared fields, abandoned native villages. Disease swept through recently. Thousands died horribly. The Pilgrims interpret this as divine providence preparing empty land. They don't yet understand. They're arriving at catastrophe's edge, settling ground soaked with recent tragedy. Consequences will echo for generations. Dorothy Bradford, William's wife, falls overboard in early December. Accident or despair, history never clarifies. Grief overwhelms Bradford completely, but the Compact holds firm. Community continues functioning despite personal tragedy. Government outlasts individuals. The system works impersonally, its strength and its cruelty bound together. Winter descends brutally. By March, half the Mayflower's passengers lie dead. Scurvy, pneumonia, starvation's slow agony. The compact governs both living and dying. Carver allocates scarce resources. Bradford organizes nursing for the sick. Brewster conducts funerals. Self-government continues even as the community shrinks dangerously toward extinction. Only 4 adult women survive winter's horror. Entire families are decimated, children orphaned. Yet the compact remains binding. Survivors must decide: continue or abandon, rebuild or retreat. The compact doesn't guarantee success. It provides structure for deciding their shared fate. Democracy cannot prevent tragedy. It can only respond. In early April, Governor Carver collapses while working in the cornfields. Sunstroke, perhaps. He dies within days, the architect lost. Under the compact's framework, they hold a new election. Bradford is chosen. Peaceful transfer of power follows. No coup, no violence, just voting. The system proves resilient. Massasoit, Wampanoag Sachem, observes these strange foreigners. They govern themselves through talking, signing papers, counting votes. So different from English traders, kidnappers, disease bringers he's known. These people seem more interested in internal arguments than immediate conquest. Yet, he negotiates warily, forging a treaty that binds communities only temporarily. The compact never mentions native peoples. Its framers focus entirely on internal organization. This blind spot proves catastrophic long-term. They create self-government for themselves without considering those already here. The oversight isn't innocent. It reveals a fundamental assumption. This land exists for their taking. Consequences mount across centuries. Squanto teaches them corn cultivation, fishing, survival in this unfamiliar landscape. Without his knowledge, starvation beckons. Yet the compact's authority extends only to its signers. Squanto isn't bound by their laws. He exists outside their political system entirely. How do self-governing communities treat outsiders? The compact is silent. The first harvest succeeds modestly. Bradford declares a Thanksgiving celebration. 3 days of feasting. Massasoit arrives with many warriors, a defensive show of force wrapped in hospitality. Wampanoag and English share venison, corn, waterfall. Beneath the friendliness lies tension. 2 peoples, incompatible land claims, a fragile peace maintained carefully. New colonists arrive on the small ship Fortune in November. 35 additional mouths to feed without winter supplies. Worse, they haven't signed the compact. Are they bound by it? Bradford faces a dilemma. Enforce an unsigned agreement or demand new signatures, admitting the document's limitations. Principle confronts reality. The Fortune's passengers sign reluctantly. Some expected royal authority, not elected government. They grumble about democracy. Why should laborers vote equally with gentlemen? The compact's principles clash with their assumptions about natural social order. Bradford insists everyone signs or everyone starves separately. Necessity enforces equality in practice. Robert Cushman steps ashore and soon preaches that communities' needs supersede individual desires. His sermon defends the compact's philosophy. Self-government requires self-sacrifice. Democracy demands discipline. Freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It is choosing together, then accepting collective decisions, even when they cut against personal comfort. Thomas Weston sends a sharp letter criticizing Plymouth's slow profits. London investors grow impatient. The compact creates governance, but not prosperity. Debt mounts. Survival stays precarious. Self-government doesn't guarantee success. It guarantees only the right to fail or succeed by their own decisions, bearing their consequences. A few years later, a food crisis forces Bradford to abandon the common storehouse system. Each family receives a private plot of land. Production increases dramatically. The compact adapts. Self-government means changing policies when they fail. Flexibility, not rigid ideology, enables survival. They learn by doing, not theorizing. Lyford and Oldham arrive secretly plotting to overthrow Plymouth's government. They send letters to England complaining about democracy, urging royal takeover. Bradford intercepts the correspondence. Under compact authority, he arrests them and calls a public trial. The community votes for exile. Self-government defends itself through open process, not tyranny. the trial exposes a fundamental weakness: no external enforcement. If the exiles refuse to leave, what then? Plymouth lacks police forces, jails, military might. The compact depends entirely on voluntary compliance. When someone rejects its authority, the system looks fragile. Consensus politics survives only if consensus holds. Yet somehow, it works. Lyford and Oldham depart not driven by soldiers, but by shame. Community pressure, moral authority, shared commitment prove sufficient. The compact's power flows from collective will, not coercion. That makes it both vulnerable and remarkably resilient. Voluntary cooperation outlasts forced obedience. Trust endures. Writing history later, Bradford understands they created something unprecedented. Not perfectly, not completely, but genuinely new. Government by agreement rather than conquest. Leadership by election rather than inheritance. Laws intended to serve everyone rather than a privileged few. They didn't fully grasp it while living it. Critics point out the compact's severe limitations. Women excluded, servants lacking full rights, native peoples ignored entirely. These aren't minor flaws, they're serious injustices. Yet the principle of government by consent contains seeds of its own expansion. Ideas outgrow their creators. Democracy's logic eventually challenges every arbitrary exclusion. Other colonies follow Plymouth's example. Connecticut drafts its fundamental orders. Rhode Island experiments with more radical democracy. Massachusetts Bay develops its chartered government. Each builds on the compact's foundation. People can govern themselves. Royal authority becomes optional, not inevitable. The idea spreads like fire through dry grass. By the late 17th century, Plymouth Colony merges with Massachusetts Bay. The compact's legal authority ends after decades of service. But its influence keeps growing. Every American constitution, every democratic charter traces part of its lineage here. To that cramped cabin, those signatures, that desperate experiment. John Quincy Adams will later call the Compact the first modern example of a social agreement forming a commonwealth by written instrument. He is right in an important sense. Ancient democracies existed, but this stands as the first written constitution of government by consent in the modern world. The Compact never uses the word democracy. At the time, that term suggested mob rule and chaos. Instead, they speak of a civil body politic, just and equal laws, the general good. They're practicing democracy without naming it. Sometimes action precedes language. Revolution often disguises itself as practicality. Imagine the scene again. November 11th, 1620. 41 men crowding a dark cabin. They believe they're solving an immediate crisis, preventing mutiny, organizing settlement. They don't realize they're lighting a fuse that will burn for centuries, igniting revolutions, toppling kings, reshaping political imagination. That's history's strange alchemy. Small actions birth enormous consequences. Desperate necessity becomes enduring principle. Temporary solution becomes permanent foundation. Those men signed to survive winter. We remember them for inspiring democracy. They were trying not to starve. They accidentally changed the direction of the world. The original parchment disappeared long ago. Only Bradford's careful transcript survived in his journal. Fitting, perhaps. The compact's importance never resided in ink and fibers. It lives in the idea that people possess an inherent right to govern themselves. That idea cannot be burned or buried. November 11th, 1620 remains worth remembering, not because perfect people created perfect government, but because imperfect people, facing impossible circumstances, chose to trust each other instead of surrendering to chaos. 41 signatures, one revolutionary idea. The birth cry of democracy still echoes across the centuries.